We'll use one and pass it on.
Yeah. Sorry for this interruption. Prem mentioned about segmentation, and he said it was only possible in the Doordarshan days. So once again, this interruption reminded me of Doordarshan days. Every now and then you used to get interruptions. Unfortunately, after so many years also, we keep getting those interruptions. I'm sorry for that. Coming to you, John, and we'll currently focus on the technology bit. You've been involved in a couple of projects at the industry level. Apart from that, in your fund house as well as other fund houses, there have been certain initiatives to increase customer engagement from the fund house, as well as some of the other things that the advisors can use to increase customer engagement. I would like your views on that.
First of all, from the industry point of view, I think all of you would have heard the term mutual fund utilities. So that's something we are working on. Ajit on the same committee. That's taking shape, and if you want to call that a Naya Tarika, it is indeed going to be a Naya Tarika. We call it a game changer. What we're going to do is exactly try to replicate what the National Stock Exchange did in India for the securities market. If you look at just 15 years ago, the way securities were bought and sold, it was paper-based. All of us remember those days when share certificates were paper, the green transfer form, which was a nightmare. And look at what the National Stock Exchange has done in just 15 to 20 years. It has become completely paperless. It is one of the best models anywhere in the world. It is touted to be one of the best. And see the transformation it has brought to India's securities market. And that has given so much of confidence to the FIIs and the others to come into the country and deal with a country like India. So in the mutual funds industry here, what we plan to do is to create something very similar. The MFU, the mutual fund utility that we plan to create, is broadly going to be an order routing platform. But what comes with it is a phenomenal change in the way we deal with mutual fund transactions. And that means convenience, ease of operations, simplicity, things like common application form, common transaction form, one check and investing in multiple funds. You'll get a one view of your portfolio from any of the terminals that are going to be used. Your distributor can give you a one view of your entire holding across the industry. These are things, these are the Naya Tarikas which hopefully will bring the customer in. Because today our products are complex, our processes are complex, our operations are complex. We deal with a lot of nightmares. And the idea is to eliminate all those nightmares and make it far more simple and understandable for the customer. So hopefully when the MFU is in place, which we hope to be by February 14, we keep shifting the dates slowly. But when it does come around, I think it will transform the way we do mutual fund operations and processing of transactions. So that is one. But if you go to look, and I completely agree with one of the slides that was presented in terms of the perception of mutual funds. It is seen as a very risky product. It is not something which is on everyone's plate. People tend to compare with ease of buying a fixed deposit. If you have to look at innovative thing that we did, for example, at HDFC, is to create this multilingual statement of account. Today, all of us in the industry throw an English statement of account to every customer around the country. We don't care if he understands our language, English. But a lot of people do not understand English. You go to most parts of the country. You go to Kerala, you go to Assam, you go to Gujarat, you go to West Bengal. There are many literate people who actually read only the local newspapers. Like in Gujarat, the Gujarat Samachar will be the #1 paper. Many households will read it. It is not the Times of India or the Indian Express. You go to the Hindi belt, there are other Dainik Bhaskar, I think is a paper that is read more often. You go to South, it is Malayalam Manorama. So people understand local languages more than the English language. And we throw an English statement. If you ask me, it's an insult. You are trying to tell him to read English when he doesn't understand. So I think these small things will be the new tarikas in which you can actually get the customer on board. And the last thing is to make products simple. And I always wonder why we don't push a liquid fund as the first step to a customer. That's the easiest thing to get him on board, get him used to a similar experience like a bank deposit, and slowly and gradually build him into the mutual fund segment in terms of asset allocation and getting on board on equities eventually. So I think there is a lot of gap in knowledge also with the customer. The customers don't really know about mutual funds, but we do a lot of these IAPs. I really don't know how it translates. You don't get customers, in fact, you're losing customers. So I think there has to be a different way in which we look at bridging that knowledge gap with the investor. Once you have that knowledge gap bridge, it's a huge exercise. It will take probably a lot of time. I think a lot more has to be done. A new way of doing it has to be probably thought about. If you get customers to be more knowledgeable about mutual funds, they will come in. You make the operations and ease of transacting simpler, they will come in. And I think you have to keep innovating and keep the product simple, the operation simple. You'll eventually get him on board. Otherwise, I can't imagine of any other tarika to bring a new tarika in. So.
Great, thanks,
In fact,
John.
if I can just add
Yeah,
to
Ajit.
what John said, since I'm on the same committee of the MF utility, from a Next advisor's perspective, and for everybody who's connected on to Next, it does not take anything away. It in fact only adds value. So it's, as John mentioned, a pure order routing facility at the back end. All the front end in terms of the value adds that Next would provide, the productization that Next would provide, would still be, would still be as
relevant.
important or even more important, because it will actually free up time for Next as well as its people to focus on the client much more. And the back-end order routing and the facilities that will get built into it will only be value adds on the Next platform as well.
Thanks, Ajit, for this addition. And coming on to that same point, platforms like Next Advisors or MF Utility or such supports, how do they really help in the growth of the IFA business? Which are the areas that they impact? And what are the areas where IFAs need to change their habits with these kind of advances?
I think one is that we say platforms probably in a very loose manner, that anything which is to do with technology is a platform which helps you with convenience. Internationally, there are whole regulations around it, and when we say platforms, actually that's the first step. AMCs are under platforms, advisors are connected to them as well, and they can choose between multi-platforms. The platforms have fee structures of their own, which are then charged by advisors who use those. That's not the nature of what we have in India. What we have in India is that the regulator is pretty straightforward when it comes to what the charging structures have to be for the industry. And what we see as platforms are essentially technology solutions that have differences in terms of the product proposition that they may give the advisors who are using it. And Next is a very unique example of that as well, since the advisor here is in the forefront and he does not lose his identity. But at the simplest level, I think this is probably more intuitive for all of us to know that what it does is, if you looked at the mission of Next, for example, it says to help the IFA grow his business. I'd say what platforms do in general is to give you more time in front of your investor. I think Atul mentioned it earlier when he was presenting the platform, that 67% of the time you're only tackling errors and service requests and all of that. And here is something that takes away all of that and gives you more time to be in front of your investor and to grow your investor base. Yeah. I guess internationally, advisors choose between multiple platforms, or many of them stay true to a single platform. It's all on the basis of what are the services that are provided by the platform. Many of them may probably end up using a platform only for compliance requirements. I mean, as we know, as regulators around the world get more active, which they will, and they will continue to do so, I think the cost of doing business, as people earlier in earlier panels mentioned, will go up. And what that will mean is that 67% that Atul was talking about in a slide will probably only keep going up if you're not leveraging a simple enough platform to do some parts of your job, some part of your engagement with your client. So I think the biggest and probably the only really relevant advantage that the platform does, and that's really the new way of doing business away from the traditional way of doing business, of having an office, going, picking up paper and all of that, is to use platforms to take away or outsource as much of your compliance and administrative work as possible, and spend the time with your core strength, which is advising clients, being in front of clients, and helping them meet their goals.
Great. Thanks, Ajit. Vineet, now we'll come to you, and I'll take a leaf from where John mentioned about a couple of points. He said one thing about multilingual statements, because Indians in the vernacular, prefer communication in vernacular language. That's number one. And number two, he said, simpler the product, better it is. Now, based on that, now let's come to the international part of investing, where we are talking about getting outside of India, no vernaculars, and getting into slightly complex products or complex market which are not, with the investors are not familiar with. Is India ready for international products?
I guess, we need to understand or the IFAs need to understand the requirement of their clients. I think it has come up quite repeatedly from the time that I have been in this room. Do it with the client is perhaps one of the speakers who mentioned it, rather than doing it for him or doing it, in a self-directed manner. So doing it with the customer or your end investor is the key. Anybody or any advisor worth his salt, if he's trying to push products in a standardized way, as a push strategy without understanding what the investor requires, what are the merits of actually either making him invest in a hybrid local equity fund or for that matter a global fund, is not understood. I think it's a job very, very poorly done. And I guess I really want to point out something that has come out quite clearly in what you just mentioned, which is that while a lot of technology is available and there is convenience of accessing multiple products, whether onshore products or offshore products, while that convenience and that access is available to all of us, we just cannot undermine the critical role that the IFA, and for that matter Next, which is just a platform to let the IFAs as a group of people perform better, do things efficiently, cannot be just undermined. We need to understand, whether the global funds are required or not. I mean, is it required because we all have started believing that there is a reason to pursue growth in multiple markets? Have we started understanding the meaning of diversification a little differently? Was diversification till now understood only between equities and debt, or between consumer goods and IT sector when you were constructing the portfolio for your customer? Or are we now saying that as an advisor of the next level and your investor of the, of the present kind wants to pursue growth in ASEAN, wants to pursue growth in developed markets like US, which is perhaps coming off a bottoming process? So we need to understand whether there is a merit in proposing this, right? Just because there is a, menu available, you are not going to order all the dishes on the menu card when you are sitting on the table in a restaurant. Or we need to understand whether global funds are required because we want to have a portion of the assets for our investors in a dollarized manner, right? Are we actually proposing de-risking from a local currency risk, for example? If all of that is well understood, then there is a way to look at this as what you are calling it a Naya Tarika. A Naya Tarika to talk about new set of products, new set of markets, new set of growth stories. So we are therefore saying that there is a bigger canvas, and that is what our present discussions with the team of Next Advisors is, where Philip is very willing to step in and say that in addition to what you do for your investors here with local mutual funds, with local manufacturers, we can bring a host of global funds which are best of the breed and best of all that you would require if you were to advise your investors here.
Oh, thanks. Great. And I think the way as these international investing options are looked at for the purpose of client's portfolio, whether you are offering an asset allocation model and international diversification, currency diversification, I think that's the key. And from that point of view, coming on to Ajit, back to you. You've launched some of the funds which have exposure to international markets, whereas some of the products that Vineet's company offers would come under that liberalized remittance scheme of $2 lakh per year, whereas the funds that you have, there's no such limit as long as RBI has allowed the overall limit for the industry. What has been the experience more from the perspective of acquiring new clients? Have these products been good in terms of getting better acquisition in the HNI space?
Most definitely yes, but let me just bring it back to the context of the topic that we have, which is the Naya Tarika. And I think where it fits in is that, maybe we for long periods of time think only in a traditional sense of saying that there are traditional products, and if you looked at all the analysis that was put up, customers clearly are still in that mode of saying that bank fixed deposit is good for me, gold is good for me, and I understand them, and therefore I will invest only in them. And I think, therefore, it has to do with the fact that even as far as investors are concerned, and I actually have a problem in calling them investors, because I think in India, predominantly what we have is savers, not investors. And our big job is really moving savers to become investors, and which is why the penetration level is really so low. Now, in that job, I think we've got to actually tell ourselves as advisors as well that we need to learn and we need to grow and we need to change. Because as there is this really old quote I remember, which everybody will be familiar with, you know, if you live by the sword, you know, and somebody can complete it for me, the traditional quote says you'll die by the sword. But the new quote there says that if you live by the sword, you'll get shot. Because technology is moving constantly, and before you think that that is the one weapon you have, weapons have changed. And therefore, I think the point I'm trying to drive at is that all of this, whether when we talk about international funds and we are market leaders as far as that segment goes, is only one part of the overall asset allocation at the end of the day. What are we trying to achieve? What we're trying to achieve is really look for correlations amongst asset classes, and at the end of the day, build something for the customer which is reasonably uncorrelated amongst the various tools or the asset classes that you've given, so that at all points of time, he's got a balanced portfolio that he's looking at. And it's not as if the customer has got all his money in one bucket, and when the market turns,